Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's JP representing. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, it's JPR. One of the things that I am frequently asked about is my rankings for each Pokemon generation. But as we all know, Pokemon generations are kind of a touchy subject for a lot of people, just because everyone has their own preferences and often nostalgia factors. There's also just so much content in a lot of these generations, I always felt it would be unjust to simply rank them in one large top 7 or top 8 video, since Sword and Shield will be coming out later this year. But the demand is still there, so I decided to do things a little bit differently and make a video specifically highlighting each individual generation, going in order from Gen 1 to Gen 7. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I possibly can, not going to critique anything incredibly subjective, like was the keychain Pokemon a good idea or not, because who cares, that's not even like 1% of what that generation is comprised of. Anyway, let's get started with Generation 1. It's worth noting that when I say Generation 1, I'm only going to be discussing the games that came out in that time period, those being Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow. Fire Red and Leaf Green will be part of the Generation 3 review, and the Let's Go games will be featured in Generation 7, just to clarify for those wondering. Now, I've only played through Generation 1 a handful of times, not including Green. I think I've only played each version about one time, unlike the other Pokemon games that I've played dozens of times. I will say that the one thing that stuck out to me in each of my playthroughs is how unrefined some of the core battle gameplay is. And I don't mean little goofs like, oh hey, the special stat makes Psychic-type Pokemon accidentally broken, oops, or somebody goofed and gave Blizzard 90% accuracy. Those are just little imbalances and imperfections that are going to happen in any first installment of any series ever. Also, this was on the Game Boy, so they couldn't just drop a nice Super Smash Bros. Patch and remove Primape's hoo-ha combo. They also couldn't adjust these things in Yellow, because then you wouldn't be able to have battles between Yellow and past games, which means that we were stuck with some of these gameplay issues until Generation 2, and that's perfectly fine. It was a different time back then. However, there are some gameplay mechanics that every time I play through the game just seem to be so incredibly frustrating that somebody should have tapped someone on the shoulder during playtesting and said, hey, this isn't okay. Wrap is the biggest offender of this, because if your opponent is faster than you and they use Wrap, you just lose. And it's not even like a quick Hyper Beam type of loss. It is a slow, painful death as you just sit there and watch your HP gradually get choked out. Maybe that's what they were going for, but obviously nobody liked it, and thank God they changed it in Gen 2. Because of Wrap and some other moves like it, some battles in Kanto are just incredibly painful to sit through. And it's not like this is a rare occurrence either. It happens like at least once in every area, which is why it's something the developers should have seen more easily. I'll forgive a lot of Gen 1's other battle system flaws because they were just starting out, but there's still quite a few that I have to wonder, what were they thinking? As I'm sure you're aware of, I'm a pretty big fan of difficulty in Pokemon games, but the difficulty shouldn't stem from moves that don't work properly or just programmably absurdly broken. Up next, I want to talk about the Pokemon, and no, I'm not going to sit here and talk down on a lot of these old designs. When the Gen Winner army started rising up a few years ago and wailing on the trash bag Pokemon and the ice cream cone Pokemon from Gen 5, many people fired back about how Geodude and Voltorb were equally bad and lazy designs, but I'm actually gonna have to step in and say that isn't really a fair argument. It was a much different time back in the mid-90s, and there was no precedent for what a pocket monster could possibly look like. As a result, we got some very simple-looking Pokemon designs that serve purely to introduce people to the world of Pokemon. As time went on, the designs got more complex because the idea of character design itself had changed. The point I'm trying to make here is, it's dumb to hate on any generation for its Pokemon designs because character design itself has grown and evolved over time. That's why Dragonite works fine as a Gen 1 design, and Haxorus works fine as a Gen 5 design. It's a different time with different tastes and different expectations. That being said, I will criticize some of these Pokemon for being executed rather poorly. At the beginning of the game, you are presented with a choice between two bird Pokemon, Pidgey or Spearow. But as we all know, 95% of the time, people choose Pidgey because stat-wise, when it evolves, it is the superior bird Pokemon. Today we have many more moves, abilities, and other factors that can help distinguish these Pokemon, but back in Generation 1, basically only types and a handful of moves help separate these Pokemon. So I have to question why they made so many normal flying type Pokemon if all but one of them ended up being obsolete. I think they could have made some much more creative decisions, like making Fearow a pure flying type instead, or just making an entirely different Pokemon to replace Fearow. We know that they planned more than 151 Pokemon for Generation 1, so it baffles me why some of the more creative ones were cut in favor of these Pokemon that serve the same purpose. But that's enough about the Pokemon because I think the story and characters need to be recognized too. Now yes, Generation 1 is not revered for its amazing storytelling. You're not given a reason to leave home, catch Pokemon, and fight gym leaders other than it said so on TV. None of the characters are particularly deep or interesting either, but they can have some very distinctive personalities, like the rival Blue, Blaine, Agatha, Professor Oak, and Giovanni. And I know that isn't much praise for the characters, but believe me, it's better than some other Pokemon games. And don't worry, we'll get to those eventually. Getting back to the story, it is a little bare bones compared to future generations, but the story of Kanto is more about the journey of a young trainer going on a journey, rather than it is a story about a villainous team and their connection to ancient legendary Pokemon. This is reflected through the region itself, as Kanto is incredibly open and encourages you to travel and beat the gyms in a relatively non-linear fashion. Once you defeat Misty in Cerulean City, you're basically free to do the rest of the game in any order that you like, although there is a recommended path. And I can't lie, I kinda miss this aspect of the older Pokemon games, not letting the story get in the way of some good old-fashioned exploration. And I think a lot of people would agree with me on that point. Despite that, I do wish they had taken the anime approach and had Team Rocket involved in the birth of Mewtwo or something. Looking back nowadays, it's almost weird how much of an afterthought Team Rocket seems to be in the original games. Regardless, there are some nice twists in Generation 1, such as Giovanni being revealed as the final gym leader and Blue becoming the champion just before you did. I'm not saying it's a story written by M. Night Shyamalan, but it's nice to have a couple surprises here and there. Gen 1 also supplies us with some good fun in the form of game-breaking glitches and mysterious scrapped Pokemon, but in all fairness, I don't think that's something that can be weighed too heavily. Overall, Generation 1 isn't without its flaws, but it did develop an incredibly strong formula that has withstood the test of time and has helped keep millions of fans engrossed in the series. That sounded way too much like a conclusion to an English paper, I'm sorry about that. It doesn't do anything terribly, but it also doesn't do anything overly spectacular when compared to future generations. For these reasons, I'll be giving Pokemon Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow collectively a C. Thanks for watching today's video, I hope you all enjoyed. Try to keep discussion respectful in the comment section, and if you bring up some good points or things that I missed, I'll gladly reply to your comment. Hopefully my Generation 2 review will be up sooner rather than later, so keep a close eye out for that one in the near future. I'll see you guys next time.